Alright, making a video. I think I'll make a few videos about smoking. So I'll preface it by just pointing out that I'm no longer a smoker, in the sense that I don't inhale nicotine in smoke. I vaporize nicotine, so I don't pay taxes any longer. But that doesn't mean that I'm some sort of hypocrite and think cigarette taxes aren't the most un-American thing that's happened to America in American history. I mean, it's just an outrageous offense against all constitutional principle, all principle. It's just in so many ways it's so wrong, and it's in so many ways the government is conspired against the cheated in such overt ways. So even the vaporizing of nicotine, which takes all the tar and carcinogens, the direct carcinogens anyway, nicotine is only barely related to any negative health effects. So there might be some consequential impact to the materials used for vaporizing polyglycol, but no proof of any of that anyway. But regardless, the point is all the real hard carcinogens have been taken out of the process of nicotine absorption. And that method, the government won't permit American companies to distribute. They won't allow eBay to sell the products because, it will cut into their tax revenue. It will cut into their exploitation of cigarette smokers, and they don't want that to take place. They don't want people to quit smoking regular cigarettes because they want the money, and this is insidiously evil. It just really is just disgusting policy. So anyway, a little history here. I don't know whether you people are aware, but before the electric light, people had really nasty things in their house to produce light. Oil lamps, even the first gas flames were not very clean. And tremendous amounts of smoke and soot and crap, in the average human being's house. And somehow they survived all of that. Some of the founding fathers lived well into their 80s. Smokers also. So, this is a little bit of all of a sudden this huge concern about this horrid blight is a little bit nonsensical. So, and then there's, the argument about secondhand smoke I dismiss entirely just because it's so irrelevant. There's so many other issues of health concern, so much larger. The amount of smoke you can ingest through a secondhand means is so tiny, it's so minuscule. If you spent a lifetime inhaling secondhand smoke, you wouldn't likely get as much smoke absorbed, right? Than what, 1 week of a regular smoker's ingestion? So you'd have to be in an environment that was just completely congested with cigarette smoke. But anyway, so part of this is the context, because, I grew up before I was a smoker in a world where most people smoked. And, frankly, I didn't have any moments in my youth where I said, oh my God, somebody's smoking, except when somebody smoked a pipe or a cigar, just because those smokes had a real pungent odor, really strong. And so those are the ones I remember. My grandfather smoking a cigar, and it was a little bit obnoxious if he did that in the car. But otherwise, I never noticed. Never had one moment in my life where I said, oh, nasty cigarettes. Horror, horror. I started smoking when I was about 11 and a half, 12, somewhere in those, so I was still in grammar school. It was accidental. I mean, I didn't, I'd heard about cigarettes and addiction and all that kind of crap, but, as a kid, you always think you're, those just silly people. Only silly people get addicted. And, I started smoking little cigars, Tiparillos they were called, and they were pleasantly flavored, and I inhaled them, and so I got addicted to the nicotine, and so I became a pack-a-day smoker pretty quickly, and a 2-pack-a-day smoker pretty quickly as soon as I started working. But anyway, but I'd say by habit, I'm a pack-and-a-half kind of smoker. If I'm not wasting them, if I have time to smoke them all the way through. And so, yeah, I smoked cigarettes for 40 years. And I know it isn't good for me and all that crap, but yeah, I was addicted. And I wouldn't suggest any child ever smoke cigarettes. So I have offered as rational proposals would be to register current smokers. If you're really concerned about cigarette smoking, the simple solution is to regulate tobacco, make all the current addicts register them, give them permission to buy sufficient cigarettes for their own consumption. They have a card, they go to the store, they buy their cigarettes, and children would have no access to legal cigarettes then. There'd be no legal sale of cigarettes to anybody but registered addicts. And then any kid who gets addicted, you would oblige them to go through the necessary therapies of the patch and gum or the vaporizer or whatever it would take to try to get them off cigarettes. But I'm just saying, I think by attrition, you would solve the problem rather shortly of nicotine addiction. And the current smokers could live out their lives without being harassed by your nanny state bullshit. So I mean, the rational argument in court would be there's all kinds of behavior which compromises people's health, and there are behaviors that compromise it in horrible ways. Diabetes, very expensive, caused because people have poor eating habits. So should we regulate their eating habits? Oblige them to eat a proper diet? That's where this goes. And there's no rational argument, let's see, what's the right word to use? No argument of equity or fairness, no argument of reason or logic beyond the fact that one's a majority vice and one's a minority vice. So if you can't find in the law, if you can't find a distinction, if you can't find a cause for disparity between the treatment of two groups, this is how the law looks at it, the courts have looked at it, if you can't find any other reason for the disparity but a bigotry, then it's a bigotry and it's illegal. As simple as that. And there's no other reason for the disparity except one is a majority vice, poor eating habits, and one is a minority vice, cigarettes. And that's it. You can do the same thing with alcohol, far more socially destructive, even if you're not going to argue about total effects on society, but let's just let's itemize a few. Even if you were not to argue that somehow cigarette smokers were some sort of liability to society, even though they pay more Social Security taxes, even though they collect less benefits, they socially benefit society in terms of the money they put into society versus the money they take out of society. But even if you were to forego that argument, in direct comparison against a substance like alcohol, there's clearly, it's just, I shouldn't have to argue it. The socially destructive effects, the financial effects, every scale of comparison, alcohol is far more destructive. And what's the reasonable distinction between the two? What other reason besides the fact that one's a majority vice and one's a minority vice can be the definition or the reason for the disparity in treatment? 800% versus 30% in terms of taxation. Can anybody give me a rational argument besides the fact of majority vice versus minority vice as an explanation for that disparity? Do you actually think that if alcohol was only consumed by 20 million people in this country, that alcohol wouldn't be taxed much higher? Would that be your argument, that somehow the majority, if it wasn't using alcohol, would find some sympathy for the alcohol consumer who's might threaten to kill their kids on the highway? You really think there'd be any sympathy for alcohol abusers at all? Any desire not to tax the fuck out of them, so to speak? No, I think there's no other rational explanation, no other reasonable explanation that the difference in taxation, the disparity in treatment for these similarly classed people is the mere fact that one is a majority and one is a minority. And that's the only reasonable explanation for the disparity, and that is in fact fundamentally unconstitutional. And I don't think it can be rationally argued otherwise. I don't think there is any, I haven't heard any argument that contends those basic outline, the basic description of the facts. Now, people just keep mocking lawsuits. They'll mock the idea that the government conspires and cheats. Well, you can mock it, but there's all kinds of evidence for it. They statistically blame, this is the way the medical industrial complex works, because it's told to do this by the government. Somebody dies in a hospital and they were a cigarette smoker. They don't bother figuring out why they died, what other factors might have killed them. If they were a cigarette smoker and they have a cardiac disease or an arterial disease, it will be blamed on cigarette smoking. I know a person personally where their father died. The hospital, he died of pneumonia, and they blamed it on cigarette smoking. He never smoked. So let's say that let's just say they made a mistake on the form and wrote down that he was a smoker, some questionnaire or something. So even if he was a smoker, clearly they had no medical reason to say smoking caused his pneumonia, because he obviously died of pneumonia not being a smoker ever. So, even if you say there was an honest mistake, how could it possibly be an honest mistake to interpret it as proof that the pneumonia was caused by cigarettes? So it just doesn't make any sense, right? There's no way that can be resolved except for laziness. The medical industrial complex has just basically said, yes, anytime you die of anything that could possibly be caused by cigarettes, we will blame cigarettes. Just so we can build up the propaganda, build up the bullshit lie that somehow cigarette smoking is the most horrid vice the human race has ever known. And just keep pretending that these fat, lazy slobs who can't breathe air anymore without it being purified and have to have their bottle of water with them wherever they go and break a sweat walking up a staircase, somehow that's whose fault? You all become anemic pussies, and then, you're going to blame it on cigarette smoking. I mean, what a joke. But yeah, really, there's no rational explanation besides a fix. The fix is in. It's all an abuse of majority power, and you people will defend it just because what? You don't like cigarette smoking? You don't like cigarette smokers? What's your excuse except the stupid bigotry? There's no other excuse. There just isn't. There's not factually any other excuse. You want to be treated one way and you want to treat somebody else some other way. You want your vices protected and you want to fucking screw over other people. That's the only excuse for it. There's no other excuse. Like I said, I'm no longer paying cigarette taxes. I don't think any minor should ever be allowed access to nicotine. But this is bullshit. This is a crook and a lie and a theft. And that's all it is. And for you people to defend it just means you suck. You suck as Americans. You have no principles. You just take because you just protect what's yours. If it's not a right you need, fuck it. You don't care. That's how much you care about principle. That's how much you care about rational law, it's how much you care about elevating civilization to achieve something called fairness and equity. You don't care about these words or these concepts. You just prove your own fucking, you'll just act on a bigotry. A silly, stupid bigotry. You'll endorse it because you're a bigot. No other reason. It's just disgusting. You don't want a fair fight. You're crooked, weaselly, manipulative, opportunist. That's all. No integrity, no honor, nothing. You got nothing as an argument. You got no way to counter-argue what I just said, what I just pointed out. There's no counter-argument. There's no rational explanation for the disparity in treatment. It's just fucking bigotry. You're goddamn fucking bigots. That's it. Period. You suck. Yeah. Yeah. That's the way it is. I mean, like I said, I don't like being a defender of cigarettes. But I hate what it did to me. I hate what those taxes did to my life. That $3,000 meant the difference between, being just poor and being fucked. It fucked my life. And I think it was grotesquely unfair to tax addicts. To take people who have been addicted to a substance for 40 fucking years and play a game like this with them. It just makes it all the more disgusting. The most addictive substance on earth, and you would tax it. Even just think about that as a concept. The most addictive substance on earth, and you'll make it the most taxed substance on earth. And that somehow is rational. Sorry, that is evil. Fucking evil. So fuck all you fucking pussies defending it. You're just bigots. Plain and simple. And assholes and idiots and morons and liars. You just keep lying. You don't make a real argument. You just make a lie argument. Just keeps trying to pretend cigarettes are badder than your vices. Yeah, just keep pretending. Liar. Yeah. Fuck. Anyway. So, maybe I'll do a couple more of these later. We'll see how it goes. But somebody's got to do it. So I'll do it. You people suck.